Listen, how many nights have you lost sleep trying to control things you were never meant to control? How many times have you replayed the same fear in your mind as if worrying about it would somehow change the outcome? Let me tell you something today, clear, bold, and undeniable. Your worry is not your power. Your faith in God is. And if you don't hear anything else I say tonight, hear this. What you are stressing over, God has already handled. We live in a world that teaches us to hold on tighter, to plan more, control more, fear more. But the truth is, the more you try to carry everything yourself, the heavier your life becomes. You were never designed to carry the weight of tomorrow. That's God's responsibility. Your responsibility to trust, to act, to move forward, and then let go. Because when you finally release what you cannot control, that's when God begins to do what only He can do. Let me say something that might shake you a little, but it will also set you free. Most of the stress you feel right now is not because life is too hard, it's because you are trying to carry things that were never meant for your hands. Think about it. You wake up in the morning, of. ND, before your feet even touch the ground, your mind is already racing. You're thinking about your future, your finances, your responsibilities, your problems, your what ifs. What if this doesn't work out? What if I fail? What if things go wrong? And without even realizing it, you have picked up a weight, a heavy, invisible weight, and you carry it with you the entire day. You carry it while you're eating. You carry it while you're working. You carry it while you're sitting with people you love, but your mind is somewhere else. Now let me ask you, who told you that you were supposed to carry all of that? Because somewhere along the way, you started believing that everything depends on you, that if you don't worry about it, it won't get solved, that if you don't stress about it, things will fall apart. But look at your life honestly. Has your worrying ever actually solved the problem? Has staying up all night, replaying scenarios in your head, ever changed the outcome? Number. All it did was drain your energy, steal your peace, and cloud your mind. That's because worry is not responsibility, it's overload. Let me give you a simple real-life picture. Imagine you're carrying a Ivy bag filled with stones. At first you think, I can handle this. So you keep walking. But as time goes on, your shoulders start to ache. Your back tightens. Your steps slow down. And someone comes to you and says, you don't have to carry that. Put it down. But instead of putting it down, you adjust it. You shift it from one shoulder to the other. You tighten your grip. You keep holding on. That's exactly what we do with our worries. We don't release them, we just rearrange them. We say, okay, I won't think about this right now, but it's still there, sitting in the back of your mind, waiting to come back stronger. But here's the truth that can change everything for you. Some of the things you're worrying about are not yours to fix. You are trying to control outcomes you cannot control. You are trying to predict a future you cannot see. You are trying to manage situations that are bigger than your understanding. And in doing that, you are stepping into a role that was never meant for you. Because there is a difference between doing your part and trying to do everything. Your part is to show up, to give your best, to take action where you can. But the results? Unseen details. The things beyond your reach, those belong to God. And the moment you start carrying what belongs to God, you start feeling overwhelmed. Not because you are weak, but because you are overloaded. Let me bring this even closer to your daily life. You've probably had moments where you did everything you could, you prepared. You worked hard, you gave your effort to, and still you felt anxious about the results. Why? Because even after doing your part, you refused to release the rest. You kept holding on to the what if. What if it doesn't work? What if I lose? What if I'm not enough? But listen carefully, your peace begins where your control ends. The moment you say, I've done what I can, now I trust God with the rest, something shifts inside you. Your shoulders relax. Your mind clears. Your heart becomes lighter. Not because the situation instantly changes, but because you are no longer carrying it alone. And that's the freedom most people never experience. They think peace will come when everything is perfect. But peace actually comes when you stop trying to control everything. So today, I want you to look at your life and ask yourself, what am I carrying of G that I need to release? Is it fear about your future? Is it stress about money? Is it pressure to have everything figured out? Whatever it is, recognize it and then make a decision. Not tomorrow, not someday, right now. I will not carry what belongs to God, because the life you're meant to live is not one of constant pressure and fear. It's a life where you walk with effort in your hands and trust in your heart. And when you truly understand that you don't just feel lighter, you become stronger. Let me tell you something that many people struggle to accept. You are not in control of everything, and that is not your weakness. That is your freedom. But the problem is we've been taught the opposite. We've been taught that strength means having everything figured out. That being powerful means controlling every outcome. That if something goes wrong, it must be because we didn't try hard enough, plan well enough, or think far enough ahead. So what do? We start gripping life tighter and tighter. We try to plan every detail of the future. We try to predict every possible outcome. We try to avoid every mistake, every failure, every unexpected turn. And slowly, without even realizing it, we exhaust ourselves, because controlling everything is not strength, it's pressure. Let me bring this into your everyday life. Think about a time when you had something important coming up, a job interview, an exam, a business opportunity, a decision that could change your future. You prepared, you worked, you gave it your best. But even after doing all that, your mind kept spinning. What if I mess up? What if they don't choose me? What if this doesn't work out? And suddenly, it didn't matter how prepared you were, you still felt anxious. Why? Because you were trying to control something that was never fully in your hands. You can control your effort. You can control your attitude. You can control your preparation. But you cannot control how people respond. You cannot control every outcome. You cannot control every twist and turn of life. And the moment you try to control what you cannot control, you step into frustration. Now, here's where the shift happens. Real strength is not in controlling everything. Real strength is in knowing what to hold and what to release. Let me give you a simple picture. Imagine you're standing in the rain, holding an umbrella. The umbrella is your effort, your actions, your responsibility, your choices. You can position it properly. You can hold it steady. You can do your part. But can you stop the rain? And yet many of us live our lives as if we're supposed to. We get upset when things don't go exactly as planned. We feel like failures when life doesn't follow our script. We blame ourselves for outcomes that were never fully ours to decide. But what if you change your perspective? What if instead of saying, I have to control everything, you started saying, I will do my part and I will trust God with the rest? That's not giving up, that's stepping into a higher level of strength, because it takes courage to release control. Anyone can hold on tightly, but it takes wisdom to let go. Let's make this even more real. Think about relationships. You can give your time, your care, your honesty. You can show up as your best self. But can you control how someone feels about you? Can you control whether they stay or leave? Can you control how they treat you? And yet people spend years stressing over this, trying to manage someone else's thoughts, someone else's decisions, someone else's behavior. That's not strength, that's emotional exhaustion. True strength is saying, I will be my best, but I will not force what is not meant for me. Now think about your future. So many people are afraid because they don't know what's coming next. They want certainty. They want guarantees. They want a clear path. But life doesn't work that way. And trying to force certainty where it doesn't exist will only create anxiety. But when you trust God, something powerful happens. You stop needing to know everything. You become okay with not having all the answers. You move forward not because you're sure of the outcome, but because you trust that whatever happens, you will be guided through it. That's real power. Because now, instead of being controlled by fear, you are led by trust. Instead of freezing in uncertainty, you move with confidence. Instead of breaking under pressure, you stand with calmness. And here's the most beautiful part. When you stop trying to control everything, you actually start living. You laugh more. You sleep better. You think clearer. Because your mind is no longer crowded with what ifs. You begin to understand. That life is not something you have to force into perfection. It's something you walk through with effort in your hands and trust in your heart. So the next time you feel overwhelmed, pause for a moment and ask yourself, am I trying to control something that is not mine to control? And if the answer is yes, then release it. Not because you don't care, not because you're weak, but because you are finally strong enough to trust God with what you cannot handle. And when you reach that point, you don't just feel relief, you step into a life of peace, clarity, and real strength. There is a silent battle happening inside most people, and it doesn't start in their circumstances, it starts in their thoughts. Because what you focus on, you begin to feel. What you repeat in your mind, you begin to believe. And what you believe eventually shapes your entire life. Now listen carefully. Fear and faith both speak to you every single day. Fear whispers, what if it all goes wrong? Faith says, what if it works out better than you imagine? Fear says, you're not ready. Faith says, you don't need to have everything figured out, just take the next step. Fear tries to shrink your worth. LD faith expands it. And the truth is, you'll get to choose which voice you listen to. Let's bring this into your everyday life. Imagine you have an opportunity in front of you. Maybe it's a new job, starting something on your own, speaking up for yourself, or making a decision you've been delaying for a long time. The moment that opportunity appears, something else shows up too quickly, and suddenly your mind starts creating scenarios. What if I fail? What if people judge me? What if I'm not good enough? What if I lose what I already have? And just like that, your vision becomes smaller. You start seeing only the risks, only the problems, only the negative outcomes. You begin to step back, hesitate, delay, and sometimes even walk away. Not because the opportunity wasn't right, but because fear made it look impossible. Now here's the powerful truth. Fear doesn't just live in your mind, it limits your life. It convinces you to stay where you are, even when you're meant to grow. It keeps you comfortable but stuck. It protects you from failure but also from progress. And slowly, without realizing it, you start building a life based on avoidance instead of purpose. Boom. Faith works differently. Faith doesn't deny that challenges exist. It doesn't pretend everything will be easy. But it reminds you that you are not facing life alone. When you trust God, your perspective changes. You stop asking, what if I fail? And you start asking, what if this is the step I was meant to take? You stop focusing on everything that could go wrong, and you begin to see everything that could go right. Let me give you a simple, real-life example. Think about learning to ride a bicycle. The first time you try, you're scared. You think, what if I fall? And most likely you do fall. But imagine if after that fall you said, that's it, I'm never trying again. You would never learn. You would never grow. You would never experience the freedom of riding. But instead you get back up. Why? Because somewhere inside you there is a belief, a small faith that says, I can do this. Now imagine applying that same mindset to your life. Every challenge, every new step, every unknown path, that's like getting on that bicycle. Fear will always say, you might fall. Faith says, even if you fall, you'll rise again and you won't be alone. That's what expands your life. Another example, think about someone who wants to start something new. Maybe a small business, a creative idea, or a personal goal. Fear will give them 1,000 reasons not to start. You don't have enough money. You don't have enough experience. People will criticize you. It might not work. And if they listen to that voice, they stay exactly where they are. But someone with faith says, I may not have everything, but I have enough to begin. They take one step, and then another, and then another. And slowly their world begins to expand, not because everything was perfect, but because they chose faith over fear. Now understand, this faith is not about having zero fear. It's about not letting fear decide your future. You will feel nervous. You will feel uncertain. You will have moments of doubt. But in those moments, you have a choice. Will you shrink back or will you step forward? Because every time you choose fear, your life becomes smaller. You avoid risks. You avoid growth. You avoid possibilities. But every time you choose faith, something opens up. You discover new strength. You see new opportunities. You become a version of yourself you are not. To even know existed. And here's the most powerful part: faith connects you to something greater than your limitations. When you trust God, you stop measuring your life only by what you can see. You begin to believe that there are doors you cannot yet see, paths you haven't yet imagined, outcomes you cannot yet understand. So instead of living in constant hesitation, you begin to move with confidence. Not because you have all the answers, but because you trust the one who does. So the next time fear tries to take over your mind, pause and ask yourself, is this thought making my world smaller, bigger? Is this voice pushing me forward or holding me back? And then make a decision, not based on comfort, not based on fear, but based on trust, because your life will always grow in the direction of your faith. And when you truly understand that, you stop shrinking to fit your fears and you start rising to match your purpose. Let me show you something most people never notice, yet it quietly shapes their entire life. Your mind is always in conversation with itself. All day, every day, there is a voice inside you repeating, replaying, reminding, and sometimes warning. ND, whatever you allow that voice to focus on, you begin to empower. Because repetition is powerful. What you repeat in your mind doesn't stay a thought, it becomes a feeling. And that feeling doesn't stay inside, it starts influencing your actions. And those actions, they begin to shape your reality. Now think about this carefully. If you keep replaying fear, you strengthen fear. If you keep replaying doubt, you strengthen doubt. If you keep replaying negative outcomes, you start living as if they are already real. And without even realizing it, you become trapped not by your situation, but by your focus. Let's bring this into real life. Have you ever had a small problem, but your mind turned it into something much bigger? Maybe someone didn't reply to your message. And instead of thinking they might be busy, your mind starts saying, did I say something wrong? Are they upset with me? Did I mess things up? And suddenly you are not dealing with a simple situation anymore. You are dealing with anxiety, overthinking, and emotional stress. But what actually happened? Nothing changed outside, but everything intensified inside. Why? Because you kept replaying it. Let's go deeper. Think about a mistake you made in the past. Something small, maybe even something big. Now, instead of learning from it and moving forward, you replay it again and again. I shouldn't have done that. I always mess things up. I'm not good enough. And every time you repeat those thoughts, they dig deeper into your mind. That one mistake becomes your identity. That one moment becomes your definition. Not because it truly defines you, but because you keep feeding it energy. And here's the truth most people need to hear. The mind grows whatever you give attention to. If you water negativity, it grows. If you feed fear, it expands. If you focus on problems, they begin to feel bigger than they really are. But the same principle works in your favor if you choose it. Let's look at it differently. Imagine two people facing the same situation. Both lose an opportunity. The first person keeps replaying failure. I lost my chance. This always happens to me. I'm not capable. And slowly they lose confidence. They stop trying. They shrink. The second person pauses and says, maybe this wasn't meant for me. Something better could be ahead. I will try again. Aim. Same situation, different focus, completely different outcome. That's the power of what you replay. Now think about your daily routine. You wake up and before anything happens, your mind starts running. If your first thoughts are heavy, this day is going to be stressful. I have too much to deal with. I'm already tired. Then you carry that energy into everything you do. But what if you shifted it? What if you started your day with trust instead of tension? Whatever comes today, I will handle it. I am guided. I am not alone. You haven't changed your circumstances, but you've changed your mindset. And that changes everything. Now understand this clearly, you cannot always control what thought enters your mind, but you can control which thought stays. A negative thought may knock on your door. That's normal. But you don't have to invite it in, give it a seat, and let it stay all day. You don't have to replay it until it becomes your reality. Because every time you choose to shift your focus, you take back your power. Let me give you another real life example. Think about someone waiting for results, maybe exam results, job responses, or any important outcome. While waiting, their mind keeps going back to one question. What if it goes wrong? And they replay that question again and again. They imagine failure. They feel disappointment before it even happens. They create stress out of something that hasn't even occurred. But another person in the same situation says, I've done my part, now I leave the rest to God. And instead of replaying fear, they choose calmness. Now tell me who has more peace? The one with certainty or the one with trust? Because peace doesn't come from knowing the outcome. It comes from controlling your focus. And this is where your strength lies, not in stopping all negative thoughts, but in choosing what you will continue to think about. So the next time your mind starts replaying fear, doubt, or negativity, pause, catch it, and ask yourself, is this helping me or hurting me? Is this making me stronger or weaker? And then make a decision. Shift your focus. Because your mind is like a garden. Whatever you water will grow. So don't water fear. Don't water doubt. Don't water the things that weaken you. Instead, feed your trust. Feed your belief. Feed your connection with goal. Love. D. And when you start doing that consistently, you will notice something powerful. Your thoughts will change. Your feelings will change. Your life will begin to change. Not because everything around you became perfect, but because you stopped giving power to what was holding you back. And you finally started empowering what lifts you forward. There is something deeply comforting, yet incredibly powerful that most people forget in the middle of their struggles. You are not walking into tomorrow alone. Before you even arrive there, God is already there. Think about that for a moment. While you are sitting here worrying about what might happen next week, next month, next year, God has already seen it. While you are trying to figure out how things will work out, God has already prepared paths you cannot yet see. But the problem is we live as if everything depends on our limited vision. We stress because we cannot see the outcome. We panic because we don't know what's ahead. We feel anxious because the future looks uncertain. But what if the uncertainty you fear is already known to God? What if the path you cannot see is already being arranged? Let me bring this into your daily life. Have you ever traveled to a place for the first time? You don't know every road. You don't know every turn. You don't know what's coming next. But if you have someone guiding you, someone who knows the why, you feel calm. Even if the road twists, even if there are delays, even if things don't look familiar. Why? Because you trust the one who is ahead of you. Now imagine living your life like that. Not because you have a perfect map, but because you trust the one who already knows the destination. Too many people are trying to navigate life without that trust. They want full clarity before taking a step. They want guarantees before making a move. They want certainty before they believe. But life doesn't work that way. You will not always see the full picture. You will not always understand the timing. You will not always know why things are happening the way they are. And that's exactly where trust comes in. Let's make this real. Think about a time when something didn't go the way you planned. Maybe you didn't get the opportunity you wanted. Maybe something you worked hard for didn't succeed. Maybe a door you were sure would open stayed closed. In that moment, it feels like a setback. You question everything. You feel disappointed. You start wondering, why is this happening to me? But then weeks later, months later, sometimes even years later, something else happens. A new opportunity appears. A better path opens. A situation unfolds that you never expected, but it turns out to be exactly what you needed. And suddenly you look back and realize If that earlier thing had worked out, you would have missed this. That's what it means that God is already ahead of you. He sees connections you cannot see. He understands timing you cannot understand. He protects you from things you don't even realize could harm you. So when something doesn't go your way, it's not always a loss. Sometimes it's redirection. Sometimes it's protection. Sometimes it's preparation for something greater. But you only see that when you look back. In the moment, it feels confusing. That's why trust is so important, because you don't need to understand everything to believe that there is a plan. Let's go even deeper. Think about how much time you spend worrying about what's next, what will happen to my career, will I be successful? WH. Love. And if things don't work out, what if I make the wrong decision? And all these questions come from one place: you are trying to see what you cannot see. You are trying to step into tomorrow without realizing that tomorrow is not yours to control, but it is already in God's sight. So instead of exhausting yourself trying to predict every outcome, what if you shifted your mindset? What if you said, I may not know what's ahead, but I trust the one who does. That one thought can bring more peace than 100 plans, because now you're not depending only on your limited understanding. You are relying on something greater, and that changes how you move through life. You take steps with more confidence. You handle uncertainty with more calmness. You face challenges with more strength, not because everything is easy, but because you know you are not alone in it. Let me give you a simple, everyday example. Think about waiting for an important result, maybe a decision, an outcome, something that will affect your future. You can spend those days worrying, imagining every negative possibility, stressing yourself out. Or you can say, I have done what I can. Now I trust God. Love with what I cannot control. The situation hasn't changed, but your peace has. And that peace is powerful, because when your mind is calm, you think better. When your heart is steady, you act better. When you trust deeply, you live better. Now understand this clearly: trusting that God is ahead of you doesn't mean life will always go exactly how you want. It means that whatever happens is leading you somewhere meaningful. Even the delays, even the detours, even the unexpected turns. So the next time you feel anxious about the future, pause. Instead of asking, what if things go wrong? Ask yourself, what if things are already being worked out for me in ways I cannot see? Because the future you're afraid of is not unknown to God. The path you're worried about is already visible to Him. And when you truly accept that, you stop chasing certainty and you start walking with trust. And that's where real peace begins. Expand 6 key points in active words that people will inspire from these words from daily life example. Make it lengthy. In 800 words, don't add further key points. Don't add headings. There is a moment in life, quiet, almost invisible, but incredible. Love, blithe, powerful, the moment you finally stop trying to control everything. Not because you gave up, not because you don't care, but because you understand something deeper. Holding on to everything is not strength, it's stress. Letting go is not weakness, it's peace. But most people don't realize this. They think that if they loosen their grip, everything will fall apart. They believe that if they stop worrying, they are being careless. They feel that if they don't control every outcome, they will lose everything. So what do? They hold on tighter. They hold on to outcomes. They hold on to expectations. They hold on to how things should happen. And in doing that, they slowly lose something far more important: their peace. Let me bring this into your daily life. Think about a situation where you wanted something so badly. Maybe you wanted a specific job. Maybe you wanted a certain person to stay in your life. Maybe you wanted things to go exactly as you planned. And when it didn't happen that way, it hurt. Not just because of the situation, but because of how tightly you were holding on to it. You kept thinking, why didn't this work? What could I have done differently? Errantly, why is this happening to me? And your mind stays stuck there replaying, analyzing, questioning. But what if instead of holding on, you had said, I did my part, now I release the rest? That doesn't mean you wouldn't feel anything. It doesn't mean you wouldn't care. But it means you wouldn't suffer endlessly over something you cannot change. That's the difference. Letting go doesn't remove effort, it removes unnecessary burden. Let me give you a simple example. Imagine you're holding a glass of water. At first it feels light, no problem. But if you keep holding it for hours, your hand starts to ache, your muscles tighten, it becomes painful. Now tell me, is the glass heavy? Number. But holding it for too long makes it feel heavy. That's exactly what happens with your problems. Some situations are not meant to be held onto forever. They are meant to be faced, learned from, and then released. But instead, people carry them for days, weeks, even years. They hold on to past mistakes. They hold on to disappointments. They hold on to things that are already over. And slowly it drains their energy, their joy, their clarity, because they never put the glass down. Now. Here's the powerful truth. Peace doesn't come from controlling everything. It comes from knowing when to release what you cannot control. Let's make this even more real. Think about relationships again. Sometimes you try your best. You give your time, your effort, your care, but things don't work out the way you want it. And instead of accepting it, you keep trying to force it. You overthink. You overexplain. You overhold. But deep inside, you know you cannot force someone to stay, to understand, or to feel the same way. And the more you try to control it, the more painful it becomes. But the moment you say, I gave my best, now I let go, something shifts. The pain doesn't disappear instantly, but the pressure does. You stop fighting reality. And when you stop fighting you create space for peace. Now understand, this letting go is not about losing something valuable. It's about making space for something better. Because when your hands are full of things you're not meant to carry, you cannot receive what is meant for you. Let's look at another everyday example. You're waiting for something important to result, an answer, a decision. And our mind keeps going back to it again and again. What will happen? What if it doesn't work? What should I do next? And you keep holding on to that uncertainty. But the result is already on its way. You cannot speed it up by worrying. So what are you really doing? You are holding on to something that is already out of your hands. Now imagine instead you say, I have done what I can. Now I release it to God. That doesn't change the outcome, but it changes your experience. You breathe easier. You think clearer. You live in the present instead of being trapped in the future. That is peace. And that peace is powerful because when you are at peace, you are stronger. You make better decisions. You respond instead of reacting. You move forward instead of staying stuck. Now here's something important. Letting go is not a one-time action. It's a daily choice. Every day you will face situations where you feel the urge to control everything. And every day you will have to remind yourself, do I need to hold on to this or can I release it? Because life becomes lighter when you stop carrying unnecessary weight. You don't need to control every outcome. You don't need to fix everything. You don't need to have all the answers. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply say, I trust God with this, and then truly let it go. Not halfway, not while still worrying in the background, but completely. Because when you do that, you don't lose control, you gain peace. And that peace will carry you further than control ever could.